There is a book in my barn that I wish I had never opened. I found it stuffed in a hay bale, the cover barely hanging on. It was shaped like a bunny mask, a wrong one. I did not think much of it at the time. I just put it on a shelf and forgot about it. Then I cleaned that shelf a few weeks ago, and I read what was inside. I'm not going to tell you it was a story, because by the end, I was not sure it was. Okay? Some context first. I work a family farm, nothing special. Horses, a couple of cows, the usual chores that never end. One afternoon I am feeding my horse, and my hand hits something that is not hay. It is a book, soft at the edges and water-stained, the binding barely holding together. The cover has this design on it, a mask. Rabbit ears, but the proportions are off wrong in a way I could not explain. Title: Animism. No author, no publisher, nothing. I shelved it and did not think about it again until I did. What follows is what was written inside. I am reading it to you exactly as I found it. A boy sat on a crooked wooden chair. His eyes were locked on the plate in front of him. Meat, butchered without any real skill, bones jutting out at odd angles. All of it under a thick, glistening coat of something. He did not look up. He watched the meat instead. A bubble rising here, a worm curling there, barely visible in the dim light. There is no reason for this now, a voice said. You know as well as I do why we have to do this. The boy dragged his eyes up, past the table, up the man's chest. His neck was smooth, unmarked. Something cold settled in the boy's stomach before their eyes finally met. The man wore a mask. Off-white, a rabbit's face, except every feature was wrong. Too long, too soft, folding in on itself. The nose jutted forward like a snout stretched by hand. The ears hung a full foot past where ears should end, and the eyes were hollow, empty. That mud had it coming, you know it as well as I do. It was not pure at all. Nothing pure about it. The boy fought to keep his eyes open. He stared into those black sockets anyway. The man went quiet and studied the mess of meat in front of him. He breathed out, slow and strained, then turned his head. He raised his arm. This is what it did to me, to your own father. I hold no hatred for purity. I hold no hatred for good intention. But there was none of that here. I was its master, and it hurt me. There is nothing pure in that. The arm he raised was ruined. A ragged sleeve of skin, barely attached, hanging off a hand mangled almost to the wrist. The boy wanted to close his eyes, just for a second. He could not make himself look away. The wound was dark in the low light and clearly rotting. Then silence. The man lowered his arm and looked again at the unrecognizable meat on the plate. His breathing stopped. He tilted his face toward the ceiling, like he was waiting on an answer to a question he never asked out loud. He raised his other hand. He ran a black-gloved finger over the frozen smile of his mask, slow, deliberate, then dropped it. Close your eyes, child. So the boy did. He finally let his eyes rest, face still turned toward his father, even in the dark. Sound was all he had now. Wet, squelching sounds, smacking, saliva. The man swallowed, a thick, guttural sound. It was followed by ragged breathing between each mouthful. That's enough now. I will carry him to his salvation, and so will you. The boy tried to pry his eyes open. His father, still adjusting the mask, leaned in close and studied his son's face. Be now, boy. Whatever his life was worth, he is worth carrying. I will let you indulge, just this once. The boy's head dropped to the plate in relief. His neck had ached from holding it up so long. Blood, thick and dark, dripped from his open mouth. He reached out slowly, his hands sinking into the mush on the plate. He grabbed handfuls and raised them halfway, meeting them with his falling face. Tongue working, lips gone, blood sliding down his throat as he lapped it up. He kept going, each mouthful smoother than the last. By the time the plate held nothing but bloody spit, his jaw finally closed, chewing, rough and slow. There we go. How is the taste? Added some pepper, just how we like it. The boy chewed, wet sounds filling the silence. The man watched, his face blank behind a mask. He glanced at a watch on his wrist. Expensive, out of place. When you are done, go fix your bandages. I said you could indulge yourself once. That is no excuse for laziness. The man pushed back his chair. The boy raised a hand to his cheek and felt blood seeping through the bandages there. Day is still young. I need to pray again. The man stood, one hand braced against the table, and walked toward the door on the left. The boy kept his eyes on the blood, his bandages trembling with the effort of standing. He used everything he had to push himself up. His legs shook. His hand gripped the table for balance, rattling both his arm and the plate of meat. Once steady, he started walking, one foot, then the other. His hand fell away from the table. The door was close, a few steps at most. He moved slow, but each step came easier than the last. A minute later, he reached it. Dull yellow paint, cracked wood. He pushed it open, the lock too worn to catch, the handle stuck in place either way. Light hit him, bright enough to force his eyes shut. He walked forward a few paces, blind, then turned left. He felt along the wall until his hand hit a mirror and opened his eyes. His own face stared back, blood pouring from soaked bandages, soaking into the raw tissue beneath. He only looked for a second before his eyes dropped to his hand, gripping the sink. He could not lift his gaze past his own chest. He did not want to see what was under those bandages. There was no faucet. Just a small shelf beside the basin, a roll of brown bandages, and a small bottle of thick purple liquid. He picked up the bottle. Fingers, raw where nails should be, pushed against the wet lid until it finally twisted free. He tilted his head back and poured the liquid over his bandaged face. It ran unevenly through the wraps until it dried. Numb, he peeled off a strip of bandage and pressed it to his cheek. Then he unwound the rest of the roll and wrapped it messily over his whole head. Once covered, he checked with his hands, searching for any raw skin left exposed. Satisfied, he looked back at the mirror. The face that had been unbearable to look at was now hidden under a layer of rust-colored cloth. He stared at the boy in the mirror. He wanted to look away, but studied every mark instead. He reached for the mirror's edge. He pried it open, first with force, then with slow, steady pressure. Behind it was mold, sprawling yellow-green, coating the rim and the gap where the mirror met the wall. Some of it broke loose as the door swung wide. Inside the hidden cabinet was mold, rot, and waste, layered like an ecosystem. His hands searched through it until something thin pressed into his palm. He pulled it free. It was a photograph smaller than his hand. A boy, healthier, fuller, standing beside a grown man, roughly the size of his own father. A studio backdrop stood behind them. The man's hand rested on the boy's shoulder, and both of them were smiling. He poured the rest of the bottle onto the back of the photo and closed the mirror. He held the picture up, level with his face. His eyes moved, his reflection, then the photo, back and forth. Minutes passed. His eyes kept closing, opening just enough to keep looking. Each time, his face felt further from his own. Eyes sinking deeper, nose collapsing inward, ears shrinking to small holes at the sides of his head. The wounds under his bandages widened and bled more. His hand drifted toward the bandages, then pulled back. He stood still for a long time. He looked down, nothing but darkness. He looked back up into the mirror, senselessly ignorant. He lacked so much. I am true to God. The thoughts pressed in, uninvited. Father knows I won't hide in my skin. He looked at the man in the photo again, his smile, his golden eyes. He knew his father had been the same once. He knew that he too had left behind doubt and fear for a life built on holiness. But something twisted in his chest, the same as every time he looked at that face. It was a face unlike his own now, a face from before. Before the light that showed the truth, a truth foreign to that old world, but so clear now. It was a signal pointing forward. He did not know exactly where that light would lead, but if his father followed it, so would he. Still, the unease stayed. That man's face was nothing like his own anymore. Is that still what he sees when he looks in the mirror? He pressed his thumb to the man's face in the photo, smearing it with flecks of his own skin. That must be the truth. I want to see what he was given. The muscles in his face twitched, pulled, and moved on their own. Why can't I see it just once? Purity means listening to your own heart, so why can't I see it? He finally pulled his eyes from the photo. He twisted his neck back toward the light. High on a wall, a small barred window. Wouldn't it look good on you too? A loud bang, then shouting from somewhere behind him. He spun for the door, faster this time. Some strength he did not know he had kicked in, and he shoved the door wide. What he saw was his father, his arm locked around the throat of a black goat. The animal was thrashing uselessly against him. Deep cuts ran across the man's chest, blood streaming freely. But he did not stop. He dragged the goat straight into his prayer room and kicked the door shut behind him. It did not latch. It just swung back open a crack, letting a sliver of light spill out. The boy stood frozen by that door and did not notice the front door still hanging open behind him. His legs, stronger now somehow, carried him slowly toward the gap in the prayer room door. A strange sound reached him, frantic, almost like laughing, if laughing could sound wrong. He nudged the door open, just enough for one eye. He squinted against gold light he could not place. His father lay prostrate before the goat, which now hung split in half over a cross. Insides removed clean, a red gap where flesh should connect. To the left, another goat, headless. But the person in that room was not his father. It was the man from the photograph. The mask was gone. He wailed, louder with every breath. "My boy, save my boy. He knew not what he did. Why do you curse him like this? I had to act. You knew that." Nothing answered him. He lowered his head, and a small broken sound escaped him. That boy was not supposed to die like that. I was teaching him grace. Was that weakness? Was that my own fault? The boy's eyes went wide, wider than his ruined eyelids should have allowed. He could not look away. He stared at the goat, the blood soaking its hide, the chest torn open. Organs spilled, tendons already severed. Its face, painted red, with rigid eyes staring back at him. Something familiar rose in him for half a second before his strength gave out entirely. His knees hit the floor hard. The man turned, and golden light caught his eyes, his skin. His face twisted, confusion first, then fury, teeth grinding together as the boy's bandages slipped loose. He crossed the room in seconds, tore the door open, and sent the boy sprawling. Something old rose up in the boy's chest, a hollow feeling, opening wide. New strength pushed him back onto his feet. Before he could fall again, the man's hand closed around his arm, yanking it high. The man's fist drove into his stomach. Blood sprayed from the boy's cracked mouth across the man's chest. The man threw his whole body forward, launching the boy into the wall. Bones cracked, multiple all at once. The boy stayed conscious. Blood ran into his eyes now, blurring the man standing over him, tense, ready. "Is this your answer, my own son?" A betrayal the worst kind. He kept yelling into empty air. The boy could only hear his own blood rushing in his ears. But there was another voice, too, inside. "Boy, I gave you everything. I gave you what you needed and cut away the rest. I was perfect. What did he cut away? What of himself did he give to the light? Who is he, really? I left my own face behind, but he never cut away the excess." The man dropped to one knee, grabbed what was left of the boy's face, and stared into where his eyes should have been. There is no mercy for those who can't give themselves. Splinters, dozens of them, buried in the boy's hand, some tiny, some longer than his palm. The impact had torn through the wall along with his body. There is no mercy for those who can't give themselves. The boy moved smooth, almost fluid, blood and pus coating his hand. He drove those splinters straight into the man's face. The man slammed the boy's head into the wall, pulling back sharply. But the boy's hand had already torn away another strip of his skin. He pressed his hand to the wound, but it was not enough to cover it. He studied the blood pooling beneath him, then turned back to the boy. His mouth started to move, slow, then faster. A smile crept across his ruined face, blood tracing every new line in his skin. "That is truth. For the first time, you brought back my fervor." Tears rose in his eyes, falling into streaks of blood. "I'm so happy I had you." He grabbed the boy's shoulder, raised one arm to the ceiling, and brought it down, again and again. His knuckles split open with every hit, fingers bending wrong, cutting into his own hand. Again and again, the boy's face gave way further, bones splitting through the man's skin. He did not stop until nothing remained but shattered bone and a dark mass where a face used to be. He stood and looked down at his son, then at what remained on his own torn hand. He raised one finger and licked a small piece of flesh from it. He held it there a moment, then let his shoulders drop. "I'll carry you to salvation now. We will all make it." Something that was not blood dripped from his raised hand. A few drops slid down his ruined face, mixing with what remained of the boy. He stood there, swaying just slightly. At the edge of his vision was the door, still open, still letting in light. A weak smile crossed his face, and he started walking toward it, his legs unsteady beneath him. He reached the door. Light swallowed him whole. The ground gave under each step, his boots sinking into soft earth. Wind blew against his ruined face. The smell of blood was thinning, fading, carried off somewhere else. The world got brighter and brighter, until the light stopped being light and just became everything. His heart slowed, and in that moment, he said he felt warmth, the kind you only feel once from someone who held you before you could remember. "O Lord, won't you look upon us all?" That is where the book ends. No author name, no date. Just blank pages after that, front and back. I do not know why it was in my barn. I do not know who left it there, or how long it sat buried in that hay before I found it. I put it back on the shelf. I have not opened it again. If you made it this far, yeah, me too. I still do not know what to make of that book. Maybe it is just a story someone wrote and lost. Maybe it isn't. Either way, I'm not going back in that barn alone for a while. If this got under your skin, hit subscribe. There is more where this came from. And if you've ever found something on your property you could not explain, tell me in the comments. I read every one. See you in the next one.